Last minute adjustments. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have blessed peace with my Lord so near. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Up next, Heart of Worship. Sorry, I'm already winded. I'm tired this morning. When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. It's all about you, Jesus. All right. Pardon. Last up is As the Deer. I like this one. I know it's an oldie, but I like it. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after thee. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I want you more than gold and silver, only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You're my friend, and you are my brother, even though you are the king. I love you more than any other, so much more than anything. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you.
Amen. Well, good morning. It's good to be back with my family. We had a fun trip, though, so you want to know how was it? It was, yeah. I've been fishing a long time. This weekend made almost 60 years. And I'll just say this, that was the best day on the river of fishing I've ever had in my life. God just said, okay, here he is, eat. And it was fun. So thank you all for letting us go. We listened last Sunday. Appreciate everybody that was engaged in the worship. And did Ben not do a fantastic job telling us what it means to be submitted? And so today we're going to finish up in the book of Ephesians in chapter 6. I have enjoyed our time in Ephesians, and I hope that you have. I hope it's been beneficial. But Paul brings us to this place at the end of the book after telling us how God sees us and how others see us and what it means to walk in faith. He says, and now then I need you to understand something, and it's very simple, guys. It's war. It is straight up as real as what happens anywhere around the world, warfare, and it's spiritual warfare. And I think oftentimes we discount the reality of spiritual warfare. We just don't think enough about it and recognize it when it's going on. We kind of almost get in this lull of just reality, day-to-day life on earth. And we recognize that there's a spiritual realm. Yeah, we, identify, yes, there's a spiritual realm. I think where we miss the point is how engaged we really are in the spiritual realm. I need to remind us, not that we don't already know this, but when God created us, He made us in His image and in His likeness. And we have a physical body. All of us have one of those. And we understand what that part of the physical realm is about. We have an emotional self. All of us kind of have that. It's kind of your personality. It's who you are. And I have an interesting personality, I've been told. I'm multilingual, sarcasm being my primary. But we're also spiritual beings. Being made in the image of God means that we're also a spiritual being. And that's what separates us from the animal kingdom. So if someone says we're just a higher level of mammal, no, we're not. It's a completely different class. Because mammals don't have, all of the animal kingdom do not have a spiritual component. You see, from the day that we are formed in our mother's womb, we exist for eternity as a spiritual being. And that's where the attack is. That's where the warfare is. Now, there's sufficient warfare and attack in the physical realm. There's sufficient warfare and attack in the emotional and the personal, the personality. But the majority of the time, the fight that we are the most deeply ingrained in is a spiritual fight. And if I can be honest, most of the time we're the least equipped to deal with the spiritual warfare. And that's what Paul is finishing this book about, and he's saying, all right, guys, now that you know all of this, in verse 10 of chapter 6, he says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. And having done all to stand firm, stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints. The first part of this is what I call the call to arms. It's the call to arms. And I think about that. Never served in the military. I appreciate all of you that have. I've never been in that realm. I appreciate you. I'm able to stand here today and freely preach the gospel of Jesus Christ as I see fit because you were willing to go do that and to protect my freedom to do so. So I appreciate that. I do know this, however, I'm a history nut. And in the Revolutionary War of the United States of America, there was this group of soldiers that were just kind of like dudes like me. They just lived at the house and they hunted squirrels. And they did all of that stuff. And they were called the Minutemen. Remember reading about them when you were a kid in history? And the Minutemen's job was to go about normal life, do your thing. You farm, you raise your kids, you do your job. If you work at the sawmill, you cut lumber. That's your job, you do that. But at a minute's notice, when a call to arms comes, take up your arms and go to battle. To me, this is exactly what Paul has been telling us. You live your life, you do your thing. You raise your kids, you do your job. You engage yourself in life in general, but always be ready for the call of arms because the spiritual realm and the battle that we're engaged in is always at the edge of town. Always. Sometimes it creeps into the neighborhood and sometimes it comes into your own house. And so this is a call to arms. Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Knowing that we're caught up in this spiritual cosmic war between good and evil, God and the evil one, between the pure and the vile, the wicked. Those are the battlegrounds, and those are the things that play, and we're caught in the middle of that. And knowing that, Paul rouses us to this understanding, and I hope that we grasp the gravity of the situation. If you do not think that evil wants to suck you in and your children and pull you into the depths of hell, you're wrong. That is exactly what they want to do. And they will do that. And don't forget that even Satan comes as an angel of light. It can look perfect, look pure, look good, look honest. But if we're not engaged in spiritual warfare and using the weapons of our warfare and, as Paul says clearly, the power of God, we'll fall. I just want you to know that. He says you do not have the strength on your own to wage spiritual warfare. You don't have it. It's impossible for you and I to take on the battle of the spiritual realm in our flesh, in our own understanding. I'm incapable. It would be worse than Jake Paul wanting to fight Mike Tyson. It would be Jeff wanting to fight Mike Tyson. I'm a pretty good grappler if I can get on the ground and assume the fetal position. I'm pretty sure Mike Tyson knocked me out before I get there. But that's really what it is. If I think that through my wisdom, my knowledge, my strength as a man, my understanding of how the world works, if I think that I can attack the evil one and take on spiritual warfare with just my ability, he says, you will absolutely be eaten alive. Therefore, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Now, I just want to make something really clear. If I could handle the spiritual warfare by myself, I wouldn't have needed Jesus. True? If I had the capacity within myself to ward off all of the evil and all of the temptation and all of the sin that comes with it, then Jesus wouldn't have needed to come. But he did, because he knows you and I. And Paul reminds us this battle is the most real battle you'll ever fight. And you have to, it's not this you need, it is a must. It is a necessity that you stand in the strength of God's might, not yours. You ever tried to tackle a spiritual problem with a personal strength and plan? You ever tackled those? You ever had the evil one? You ever had Satan tempt you to do something and you just manned up and said no? Only to do it anyway? It's because we know. So the first thing is this call to arms. Are you ready? At any given moment, when the spiritual warfare comes to your house, are you ready to defend? Are you ready at a moment's notice to take up arms and to take it on face to face in the strength of the Lord? If you're not, then today is the day that you need to really pay attention. I assume, and this is an assumption, and I know we shouldn't do that, but I assume that there's enough people here that a lot of us have failed miserably and lost spiritual battles trying to do it on our own. I'm pretty sure there's enough scars here, war wounds, and bandages that go, yeah, we tried that and failed. So, what's the solution? If there's this call to arms, if Paul is rousing us up to understand how serious this spiritual warfare is and how serious, and I mean as serious can be, that your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your adult children are victims of warfare. I appreciate Andrew Dawson's organization. Caleb and Alyssa are part of that, Operation for Freedom. Some of you all have been able to go on a few of those trips. I would encourage everybody at some point to go on one of those and go into the belly of evil and see exactly what spiritual warfare looks like on the street. It's scary. And we sit back here in Canyon, Texas and think, oh man, I'm in a safe zone. That spiritual junk, that's all up in the big cities. That's in the bad place. No, it is right here in our own town. And it's been trying to weed its way into our society, into our schools, and into our families for a long time. And every year, there's this battle. So he says, put on the whole armor of God. All of it. All of it, the whole armor of God. And I appreciate that Paul uses an illustration of a Roman soldier and all of the pieces of equipment that the Roman soldier puts on. Now, many years ago when we were first starting the church, in fact, we were still in the garage, wasn't we? We had the blessing of having an active Marine coming to our church, and he was a recruiter here, and he was able to get almost all of the pieces. There was some that he wasn't allowed to carry out. But he showed up one Sunday dressed in full armor, battle armor, all of it, the flak jackets, the helmet, the boots, all of it. And he just stood there. Some of y'all may have been there. And he just stood there. I'm looking over there, and there's two. We go, yeah, we remember that. That was like 18 years ago. No, it was 15. It was 15 years ago. And he stood there at attention the whole time I was preaching this sermon on the spiritual warfare. And he stood right there in front of me, dressed like that. And I'm going to tell you what, that was the safest I've ever felt at church, ever in my life. And it just kind of left this mark. And Paul says, listen, put on the whole armor of God. You got to put it all on. Why? So that you're able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Do you not wish that he would just walk up and say, hey, I'm Satan. I'm here to kill you. This is what I'm going to do. If he'd do that, I might catch a clue before I get sucked in. He doesn't call himself out. He schemes and he plots. And I don't know about you, I'm pretty crafty, and I am. I'm pretty cunning, pretty smart. Well, he's got me beat by a mile. He can suck me in and get me believing something and doing something before I even realize what's happened. He says, you put on the armor of God that you will be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. I was thinking about the schemes of the devil and how they present themselves. And it's almost never, to a Christian, to a believer, it's almost never some dark, deep, evil thing that he lures you to do. Almost never. Because the Holy Spirit has already opened our eyes and we have the light of Christ in us. It's never just straightforward. It's always some sidetrack that he takes. Something that has a little bit of truth, a little bit of, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. And he just reels you in. We were fishing up there last week, and Sandra is flinging this. It's called a float and a fly. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a clear bulb. You put a leader and a fly on it. And I put new line on her reel, and she was flinging it from about here to the back door. And I'd watch her, and she'd reel in, and a fish had hit the bulb. That's not what she's after. She'd wait, and then it would hit the fly. She'd set the hook, and I got to watch. We both figured out we were missing a lot of fish watching each other fish. And I was watching her one day, and she watches Major League bass tournaments. And I said, honey, we're trout fishing. I'm going to tell on you, babe. But I was watching, and this trout, I mean, it's way after you can barely see the fly behind the bulb, and this trout comes up and grabs it, and she rips it on this thing like, whoosh, and got it. And then went to cranking. And this little old trout's about that long, and he's got no fight left in him. By the time he gets there, he's just dragging behind the bulb. He started off fighting, but it was about halfway in, and he just gave up and just got sucked in. And I said, that's exactly what Satan does. He puts a fly out there that looks really good, looks like food, looks like something I want to do. I make a get, and I realize I got stuck, and I fight for a second, but he's stronger than I am, and he'll reel me in. He'll suck me in so fast that I lose all strength if I'm doing it on my strength. So the need for divine strength and the power of the Lord is key to the armor of God. You can put on all of the armor of God, but if you're standing in your own power, it still will fail you. It's the strength of his might that makes the armor work. So let's look at it for just a minute. He says in verse 12, understand who your enemy is. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over the present darkness, against spiritual forces in heavenly places. He says it's not people that we're fighting. As a side note, may I say we need to be better at identifying who the enemy is. It's not people. People aren't the enemy. Now, in a real warfare, people with guns shooting in you, they're the enemy. I get it. But in the spiritual warfare, the people that are being used are not the enemy. It's the enemy behind the people being used. Does that make sense? And if I misidentify who the actual enemy is, I will attack the person and let the enemy move on. And I'll never confront the actual enemy. And the enemy knows I'll do that. And he's good with me attacking people. He's good with me dividing churches, calling out brothers on stuff. He's good with that. He'll let that go because he'll just shift and go to another person and another person. He says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. I wish it was. I'm not a very good fighter, but I could hold my own for a minute if it was a straight-up fist fight. But it's not. And most of the time, we're taking a knife to a gunfight in the spiritual realm. Unless I have the power of his might. So understand that. The need for that armor is because the weapon, the supernatural weapons that the enemy uses require supernatural strength. You understand that? The supernatural attacks of the enemy require a supernatural response. And that comes from God. He's crafty, our enemy is. He's wily. And I want to say this, he is patient. Satan is the most patient. He'll wait your whole life to kill you. My dad was raised back in the Depression era, post-Depression. He was born in 1937. I think the Depression ended somewhere in the early 40s, except in Oregon County, Missouri. It was about 1956. My dad grew up on a farm. They were kind of sharecroppers. They did the farm work for the Klein family, and then they split the proceeds of the crop at the end of the year. And my dad grew up with granddad plowing mules. Anybody ever plowed mules? Okay. And they're good animals for plowing. But my dad had a saying that I grew up with, and I didn't really understand it until I got to being around mules. He said, mules are fantastic animals, and they'll wait their whole life to hurt you. They're patient. They'll wait 30 years before they'll hurt you, but they will hurt you. Satan will wait a lifetime to take you down. He'll let you get saved as a child in church, vacation Bible school, or in children's church. He'll let you get saved as a young teenager in high school, and he'll let you just do that. He'll pester you a minute. And then he'll let you grow up into an adult and let life get hard. He'll let situations in your marriage get difficult. He'll let your finances come apart. And he'll patiently wait. And then he will grab you. And it may be 40 years. There's this new phenomenon in our culture today. It's called gray divorce. Do you know what that is? Gray divorce. I was reading about it yesterday. It's fascinating. It's divorce among people that have been married over 25 years. Think about it. It's the divorce of people that have been married over 25 years. That's a long time to figure things out, to just blow it up, isn't it? Satan will wait 25 years to tear your family apart. He's got no problem with that because he's patient and he's crafty and he's wily, and he will bring all different kinds of flies. He'll try dry flies, wet flies, midges. He'll try all of it. He'll try every kind of thing that, how do I want to say this? Because I don't want to make fishing sound evil, because it's not. It's of God. In fact, he told us to be fishers and men. He'll use every distraction he can find to take you away from the power of God's might. So I need to rightly identify and never forget that it's a spiritual battle. I can't fight it with physical weapons. I can't fight it with physical weapons. So in verse 13, he gives us a call to prepare. It's one thing to be at a call of arms ready to go, but you kind of need to know what to do, don't you? It's one thing to be a Minuteman plowing a mule out there with your squirrel rifle leaning up against the tree, but it's another thing to know exactly how that rifle works. It's one thing to be decked out in the entire armor of God, but it's a complete other thing to put it on and know what it works like and how to apply it. And so he says, therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all stand firm. In verse 14, stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all of the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. I'm not going to necessarily break all these down. I think we can read it and understand what he's saying, but let's list the weapons of the pieces of armament that God has given us. First, he's given us truth. Truth. Guys, I'm going to tell you what. The most important thing that we can carry with us is truth. And I can be able to identify the scheme of the devil when it doesn't align with truth. There's a lot of folks, and I try to be extremely cautious, but there's a lot of people that have half-truth, pieces of truth. And they lead people astray because it sounds true and you can check it. Well, that part's true. But is it all true? Does it all line up with God's truth? Jesus said that he came to set us free from ignorance, if you would, by giving us truth, giving us life. And the first thing that Paul says is to stand there with the belt of truth on. Now, every day we get up and we go to work or we go do our life or whatever it is, and there's this routine of getting dressed, right? And you put on your shirt, you put on your pants, you put on your belt, your socks, your shoes, if you wear any of that. But there's a process. And you don't go out without all of the pieces. And he says the most important thing you're going to start with is truth. So I want to ask you a hard question. Do you know what the truth is? Are you sure you know what the truth is? Do you think you know what the truth is, or do you know what the truth is? One of the foundational things that I wrestle with people as a pastor is this very question. It is, are you saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ? Well, I think I am. I don't want you to think you are. The truth of the matter is that God has told us in his word that I can know that I am. I can absolutely know that I have been saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. That's a truth. And I also know the truth is there's no other way to be saved, to be made righteous, except by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. And I watch people in their faith walk begin to get all kind of scattered, and things get weird, and they begin to question stuff. And I believe in questioning things. I question stuff all the time. I'm constantly questioning Sandra. I question stuff all the time, but I'm not questioning because I'm argumentative. I'm questioning because I want to make sure that I'm right in what's true. Have you ever believed an untruth to be true? Have you? I'm not going to blow this up, but there's a couple of holidays that we celebrate that have figures attached to them. One of them's in spring, one of them's in winter. That's as far as I want to go because I'm not going to mess up families, cause a fight. But there's a huge lie told there. It's an untruth. And as children, we believe it to be true. And then we have to ask our parents, why did you lie to us? You tell me not to tell the truth, or you tell me not to lie, and then you lied to me. What is this doing? You see, we do. And it can be something as simple as that. But there are untruths that we believe to be true. Why? Because we don't investigate them to find out. We just take them at face value as being true. So I'm not opposed to questioning. What I'm opposed to is when God speaks his truth going, yeah, but I don't agree. You don't have to agree, but you can't change the truth. You don't get your own truth. There's not your truth, my truth, and his truth. There's God's truth, and it's all truth. And I've said this before, and it's kind of blunt, and I probably shouldn't say it again, but I don't really care what your opinion is because your opinion is irrelevant. So is mine. The only opinion that's relevant is that of God. Your opinion about it, you can have it. You're welcome.